Last class we started with the topic interstitial lung disease. Interstitial lung diseases, it's the other name you can call it as it represent a large number of conditions which involves the lung parenchyma. It may be alveoli or alveolar epithelium or capillary endothelium, and the spaces between the lymphatics and perivascular tissues. So this another thing is this thing is now it has become 50% of the ILDs are idiopathic, as I talked about in the last class. Today I'll take up a few specific IPF and we'll talk about that. And what is important to remember, the amongst the idiopathic IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, UIP, you have to remember UIP is the most common type. You have several subtypes under this. As you can see, we'll talk about the idiopathic IAPs, and you have major and rare, but these are the certain acronyms you have to remember, like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, non-specific interstitial pneumonia, cryptogenic organizing pneumonia, respiratory bronchiolitis, ILDs, desquamative interstitial pneumonia. These three, cryptogenic, respiratory, and desquamative, have a strong association with cigarette smoking. And then you have something like acute interstitial pneumonia. Then one thing is very important to remember, that the ILDs are mostly the disease of the old. So when there is an old population, there will be more patients, more prevalence in the cases of ILDs. Then you have another one category. Then basically the mechanism of insult is through the alveolitis or maybe the fibrosis and recurrent inflammations, and you have known causes, and among the known causes you can have environmental exposures. You have fumes, gases, radiation induced, even you can have organic and inorganic exposure. Organic exposure you can have for people working in breeders, bird breeders farm, and like such as farmer's lung, and those infected with actinomyces fungi. And then you have inorganic ones, like you have those who are people working in mines, coal mines, then in cement factories, and even those silicosis, that is to because of the events working in the sand mines, people working in the building construction department, people working in shipping department. So you have a whole lot of exposure through asbestosis, silicosis. Then these whole picture, it comes under one single comes under one single topic as pneumoconiosis. That is an occupational hazard, and that is the fibrosis caused by the occupational hazard. The more importantly, these occupational hazards, it takes a long time to a pretty long time to manifest. Then you have association with the connective tissue disorders like SLEs, rheumatoid, ankylosing spondylitis, systemic sclerosis, polymyositis, dermatomyositis, and there are certain miscellaneous ones. So the other response which I was talking about is the granulomatous response, and that again there you have unknown cause and the unknown causes. The known causes, again, the hypersensitive pneumonitis like organic dust. So what is very important to remember in this case, that certain organic dust like silicones and beryllium and even carbon, they usually manifest as a granulomatous reaction in the lungs, but asbestos manifest more as an alveolitis, as the small particles sediments in the alveoli and the terminal bronchioles, and there will be more inflammation through the macrophages and more recruitment of B and T cells, so mostly in a hypersensitive reaction. So there will be more of a alveolitis in cases of asbestosis, but in cases of silicosis and anthracosis, that is through the ingestion of carbon particles, you will have more of granulomatous reaction. Then you have something like inorganic dust. We talked about beryllium silica. Then organic dust like actinomyces and those farmers' lungs, people working in farms, people have with animal handlers and bird breeders, they are more prone to this thing. Then you have unknown causes where you have sarcoidosis tops the list. Then you have granulomatous vasculitis like granulomatosis with polyangiitis. Then Church-Strauss syndrome, patient with eosinophilia and asthmatic episodes, and they are also prone for this granulomatous type of ILDs. We talked about pathogenesis. Now we talked about the medical features that is almost common in most of them. Only the picture or presentation can be acute, subacute, or chronic. And as in the due slides, we'll take up the individual ILDs, and usually on physical examination, definitely one of the most common finding is bibacillar inspiratory crackles. Clubin can be present, not necessary. It's not inevitable finding of cases of ILDs, but it can be present. And cyanosis will always be progressive. Cyanosis may be present, but dyspnea will always be progressive, and cyanosis might be an indicated of pulmonary hypertension that's leading to right heart failure. Then medical history, you need to have a proper listing of the patient's occupational and environmental history. Proper listing is very important because it has the plethora of presentation with plethora of causes, so you have to be very careful about the history, exposure, and then the patient's current medications. And apart from that, you need to know you have to get certain batteries of tests like serological tests, anti-ANCA, P-ANCA, C-ANCA, even excuse me, then anti-CCPs, then anti-nuclear antibodies. All these batteries of them, and most importantly pulmonary function tests, you will find a restrictive pattern with reduction in FEV1 upon FVC. Ratio will be normal, but there will be reduction in FEV1 and FVC, and total lung capacity will be less, and there will be definitely decrease in DLC. This too is a very important association. Then radiological study is very important. On X-ray you might find a reticular or a nodular or a reticular-nodular pattern, and of late high dosage CT has become a modality of choice, and that has been in any patient with suspected ILDs. And even these high dosage CT has spared a lot of patients from lung biopsy for the definitive diagnosis of ILDs. And there are different types of radiological abnormalities. Mostly the abnormal involvement of the upper and mid zone will be silicosis, sarcoidosis, even anthracosis. What is very interesting to know that usually carbons and silicons, the sands, they they are basically stays on the land level, on the earth level, but they mostly involve the upper lobe of the lungs. And while the asbestos were used to have this asbestos roof, they were very commonly used in the old houses. So it is supposed to be forming a roof of your house, but it mostly involved the lower lobe. Then you can have a reticular infiltrates as patchy, it can be a very patchy reticular infiltrates, let's say idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or it could be acute diffuse opacity, bilateral opacity, which is more present in acute interstitial pneumonia, which is more corresponding, which almost looks like ARDS, Then you can have, along with, you can have intrathoracic lymphadenopathy, which is more common in a sarcoidosis and anthracosis, amyloidosis. So bronchoscopy, alveolar lavage, surgical lung biopsy is definitely a this is a modality of choice, but you have to the investigation should outweigh the mortality associated with the disease. Then only you should go for surgical lung biopsy, because it has at least 2% of mortality. I hope you are able to hear me. So now we'll touch on the individual types, certain individual types. First, we'll talk about the environmental dependent ILDs, and they are mostly coal workers, pneumoconiosis, silicosis, and asbestosis, mostly involving the mining industries. Then you have hypersensitive pneumonitis, gas or fumes exposures. Then coal miners pneumoconiosis, as you can see, it will present, you need a very high amount of coal exposure and a relatively longer time for the coal miners to manifest or to evolve as a patient of ILD, and it will take a little time, and you need a longer and larger exposure to the carbon particles. And you will find out on radiological finding, you will have round opacities with on X-ray. Almost you can see all those rounded small opacities, which will be irregular, and as the progressive pulmonary fibrosis starts in the upper zone. And what is very importantly, that calcification is not a feature. This is a feature of calcification is more of a feature of silicosis. Then you have something called Kaplan syndrome. The Kaplan syndrome is a name given to the combination of rheumatoid disease with anthraconosis, and along with this, with the association of several round nodules on X-ray picture. Then there is this silicosis, where again you have a micronodular pattern, upper lobes involved, you can see, and you will be a small multiple nodules. And what's importantly, you will have this eggshell calcification. You can see these all are this small things. These are the eggshell calcification, and nodule will be a little larger. And what is important in silicosis, the pattern can be acute also. And in acute, you will find a small nodular pattern with the ground-glass appearance, and it might coalesce into a large mass, and we can even detect the dust particles on bronchoscopy. Then in asbestosis, the clues to diagnosis, definitely the exposure, and again the asbestosis, it takes a lot of time for the patient to manifest all the symptoms of ILDs. And for the pathogenesis is almost in all these environmental exposure induced ILDs are almost the same. But in asbestosis, you will have more of an alveolitis than a granulomatous reaction, and you will have a very reticular pattern, which will be more on bilaterally basal sides, and you might have something like called pleural plaques. But it's a very common question that asbestosis will lead to mesothelioma, that is the cancer of the pleura. But most common cancer we talked about in cases in asbestosis, it is always going to be bronchogenic carcinoma, which is small cell carcinoma. And again, you can see the opacities or those irregular linings on the lower lobes. And bronchoalveolar lavage you can find on these asbestos bodies. Then most important, as I said, more than 50% of the causes is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and one of the commonest subtypes is usual interstitial pneumonia or intermittent pulmonary fibrosis of ILDs. So you will have a patient, it's again a slow indolent disease progressing. It will always be progressive, and it's more common on a higher age group, more than 50 years of age. Patient will definitely complain of breathlessness more than 90% of the times, and that will be so progressive that the patient will even hate to walk up across the room and switch on the lights, and he'll get more dependent on on the caregiver, and even he might have difficulty in carry on conversation. Then the cough will be again be he will always complain of a nagging feeling about the cough, or he might be coughing uh, quite often, persistently. It will be a non-productive. Very importantly, on examination you might find a bibacillar crackles, and then clubbing can be present, and it is usually this is the diagnostic criteria. We're talking about the diagnostic criteria. So most importantly, this is one of the subtype of ILDs, and it is a diagnosis, always a diagnosis of exclusion. You have to exclude other concrete and known causes, those related to occupational environmental exposure, those associated with connective tissue diseases, and don't even associate it with drug toxicity like amiodarone, bleomycin, and nitrofurantoin, and certain anti-cancer drugs also. And most importantly, with the recent advances in HRCTs, it has become in modality investigation modality of choice, and most of those patients they are not subjected to surgical lung biopsy. So but there's only certain drugs, only certain patients they are usually selected for surgical lung biopsies, and the HRCT criteria for UIP, you see the pattern. You will have a subpleural basal dominance, and will have reticular abnormalities. You can make all these reticular abnormalities, and there will be honeycombing. This thing is this, you can see like a honeycomb pattern. This is called, this is all honeycombing. You can see on the, and it might be with as you can see traction bronchiectasis. You can see cyst like appearance of the terminal bronchioles. So it can be with or without traction bronchiectasis. There will be and histopathological criteria will be marked fibrosis, architectural distortion, honeycombing in a predominant subpleural or paraseptal distribution, and there might be a very patchy involvement of the lung, and there will be absence of fibroblast foci, and so these, if there is any absence of these honeycombing or marked fibrosis, absence of these features, you should consider an alternate diagnosis. And what is important in open lung biopsy is always as investigation, not as per se the gold standard of diagnosis, but that is definitive investigation of choice. And transbronchial biopsy, you will miss out on transbronchial biopsies because you have to take multiple specimens for that, and even that might not come positive. Then PFT, as it happens in all the other ILDs, you will have usually the normal or increased FEV1, FVC, and reduction in individual FEV1 value and an FVC value, and the diffusion capacity for the carbon dioxide will be reduced, and there might be mild to moderate hypoxemia. IP this special type of pulmonary fibrosis, it has a very poor prognosis, and one from the point of diagnosis, the average span of life is also reduced, and the other predictors for survival will be, or reduced survival will be coexisting emphysema or presence of pulmonary hypertension, reduce FVC, TLC, and DLCO at the time of diagnosis. And there's something called a 6-minute walk test. They're looking for the submaximal exercise tolerance and exertional hypoxia. So most common causes of death in IPF is coronary artery disease, lung cancer, infection, pulmonary embolism, and then acute exacerbation of IPF. Treatment of choice, as you can see, it has a very rapid progression. It's a rather a chronic progressive disorder, but it has a very prognosis is very bad. It is a very fatal outcome with 3-year survival is up to 50%, and the only therapy, and that too in a very selected patient, is the lung transplant. And it's again because it's a disease of the old age, so most of them they skip lung transplant and they succumb to the disease. And supportive managements are like oxygen supplementation at rest or during exercise and sleep, and cough is always nagging symptom, so they can use antitussive agents. And thalidomide appears to improve the cough. And GRD therapy, because GRD it has been proposed to be one of the mechanism for exacerbation of IPF and in the pathogenesis of IPF. So GRD and those PPIs inhibitors, proton pump inhibitors, they can be tried. Then with the recent advances, we have certain drugs which are antifibrogenic. It has an antifibrotic properties like nintedanib and pirfenidone, and it has been used on a regular basis, and it has found to at least extend the lifespan or decrease the exacerbation rates. And these all are the very basic criteria for lung transplant. Usually the patient age should be less than 70, and you need to have a histological or a radiological evidence of UIP. And if any of the following like DLC less than for 39% or 10% or greater decrement in FVC during 6 months of follow-up, or a decrease in pulse oximetry to less than 88% during a 6-minute walk test, or honeycombing on HRCT scan. And now we'll come to the next topic. Is again you have the next subtype is non-specific interstitial pneumonia. It is more common in female who never smoked, around 50 years of age. Again, the symptoms is a similar one, which on HRCT you will find a predominant involvement of the lower lobes with volume loss and reticular pattern and a ground glass appearance. Histologically, you will find homogeneity and uniform thickening of the alveolar walls, and so you will find the fibrosing pattern, it encompassing with all the spectrum of cellular at all the cellular levels. And the prognosis, quite contrary to the UIP, this one has a very excellent prognosis, and it has a very good response to steroids, and the 5-year survival is above 80%. You can see the CT scan, you can see the dominant branchiovascular ground glass opacity. You can see this ground glass opacity, bronchovascular with associated reticular patterns. Again, the treatment is steroid and can be combined with azathioprine or mycophenolate mofetil. Then we have something called acute interstitial pneumonia, or the other name is Hammam-Ridge syndrome. It's an acute abrupt onset, and usually the age is more than 40, and it has an association with fever, cough, and dyspnea. And then almost maybe a week of fever or cough or dyspnea will antecedent or precede the AIPs. And again, one important thing is as I told you, it has features of equivalent or parallel to ARDS, where you have uh, uh, diffuse alveolar involvement, and you will find it's a very high mortality rate, and it leads to a hypoxic respiratory failure with acute lung injury, and you will have a diffuse alveolar damage, which uh, with the damage of the temporal association or on airspace organization and hyaline membrane destruction. You will have treatment, usually uh, they are treated symptomatically, and patient are very prone to develop respiratory failure, so they are put on mechanical ventilation. And glucocorticoid therapy is it has it's not of a definitive or concrete uh, action in such cases, so it is not clear whether glucose therapy is effective. Then there's something called cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. Again, this is seen in 5th to 6th decades, and patient might present with cough, fever, and dyspnea. And as you see, the histological features are cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. You can have intraluminal organizing fibrosis in distal air spaces with a moderately preservation of the lung architecture, and mild chronic inflammation will continue, and you will see consolidation with the basal predominance, which will be present bilaterally, and airspace consolidation, which will manifest as ground glass opacity on HRCT. And what is important to note down, that you can have a bronchial wall thickening and dilatation. So you can see these patchular opacities on chest radiograph. Glucocorticoid is supposed to be helpful in 2/3 of the cases, and again this patient's certain fraction of patient might have a rapidly progressive course with a relatively fatal outcome despite the therapy. Then we talked about the ILD associated with smoking. There are 3 patterns. You have desquamative interstitial pneumonia, then you have respiratory bronchiolitis associated ILDs, and you have pulmonary Langerhans cell histiocytosis. So desquamatic DIP is again have a very strong association with smoker. It peaks in the 4th to 5th decade and is present as cough and dyspnea. And histologically, you will find a diffuse and uniform accumulation of macrophages in the alveolar space, and it has a very good prognosis, and the best treatment is smoking cessation. Again, the effectivity of glucocorticoid is still dubious in such cases. So the best therapy is it responds very well to smoking cessation. Then again, something like respiratory bronchiolitis associated ILDs, where you will have symptoms almost analogous to what happens in DIPs, and on examination you will find crackles, and histologically you will see macrophages accumulation in respiratory bronchioles with variable inflammatory cell infiltrates in bronchular and surrounding alveolar walls, and pulmonary parenchyma may show smoking related emphysema. Again, this resolves after smoking cessations alone. Then pulmonary Langerhans cell histiocytosis. Again, it is a smoking related. It is a diffuse lung disease. It primarily affects men in the age of 20 to 40, and it's again a rapid progressive condition. Patient present you with dyspnea. Chest pain is one of the very predominant findings, and such patients may come with acute dyspnea and severe chest pain, and there might be an episode of pneumothorax. It might denote a pneumothorax because it occurs in 25% of such patients. And now HRCT, you can see nodules and thin walled cyst. That is the reason for development of pneumothorax in such patients. And it is a virtually diagnostic of pulmonary Langerhans histiocytosis. And again, you will have markedly reduced DLCO. On histopath, you will find Langerhans cells mixed, which is along with the other mixed cellular infiltrates. And again, the therapy is discontinuation of smoking, and then patient with progressive and persistent disease, you have to address them symptomatically. Then there is association of interstitial disease in the connective tissue disorders. You will have more features more corresponding to connective tissue disorders like musculoskeletal pain, fatigue, weakness, low-grade fever, chronic fever, joint pain or swelling. You may have dry mouth or dry eyes, then maybe a pleuritic chest pain. And basically the pulmonary involvement is more or less of a non-specific interstitial pneumonia, and recommended treatment is mostly oral glucocorticoid along with the cyclophosphamide and azathioprins. And then you have certain drugs, as we talked about drugs, which we commonly use are nitrofurantoin, and amiodarone is a drug very commonly used in cardiac patients, and you have salicylate, sulfasalazine, and inhalation of certain lipids and nitrogen dioxides, and certain radiation-induced fibrosis can also happen, and usually it manifests. Usually it takes around 2 to 4 weeks for the symptoms to or to start manifesting and start progressing. And then we're talking about certain miscellaneous causes of ILDs, like those association with diffuse alveolar hemorrhage, where you will have cough, fever, dyspnea, acute respiratory distress, which might require ventilatory support. You will have hemoptysis, and WBC count might be raised, and you might have a associated focal segmental necrotizing glomerulonephritis. So this is the picture of patients of ILDs with diffuse alveolar hemorrhage. So histologically, you will find injury to the arterioles, venules, and alveolar septums and capillaries, secondary to disruption of the alveolar capillary basement membrane, with subsequent bleeding into the alveolar space. And the treatment is IV methylprednisolone given given as a purge, and on a daily basis, maybe on a divided dose for up to 5 days, and gradual tapering, and then maintaining it on oral preparation. So this is all for ILDs. I know it's a very complex and a difficult topic, and with several nomenclatures and several histopathological features, and it's more of a topic which I think you must have taken up in your pathology semester also. But it is something not much to worry about. And if you have any query, you can always fire in your questions. I understand it's a tough topic. I would summarize it as ILDs are basically, you have two types of pathology, as inflammation or alveolitis, and other is granulomatosis. and then you have mostly known cause and unknown cause for both types of inflammation. And then you in granulomatous you have known causes like inorganic hypersensitive pneumonitis, organic and inorganic dust exposures. And then you have unknown causes like sarcoidosis and all the other several causes. While in cases of the other type, the inflammatory alveolitis and inflammatory type, you will have, always remember, you will have either uh, a major, you will have idiopathic interstitial pneumonia as a major, and rare ones where you will, this type interstitial idiopathic interstitial pneumonia, it is one of the most common type. More than 50% of cases of ILDs, they fall under this category. And in idiopathic interstitial pneumonia is most common form of ILDs, and you have several subtypes. You have to remember these, at least these subtypes, like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Fibrosis, as the word says, it has a bad prognosis, and it's a slow indolent disease, but it has a very bad prognosis. And once the fibrosis sets in, the lifespan is of life expectancy is less than 50% for more than 3 years. Then you have something like non-specific intestinal pneumonia, which has a better prognosis. And then you have something called cryptogenic organic pneumonia, and then you have smoking associated ILDs like respiratory bronchiolitis ILD, desquamative interstitial pneumonia, and Langerhans lymphocyte, which is their pulmonary Langerhans histiocytosis. And then you have acute interstitial pneumonia, which has a very acute onset, which is manifest with fever and dyspnea, and it has again, it has a variable prognosis, and the feature is analogous to what happened in ARDS, and the treatment is symptomatic. So this is the major one you have to remember in idiopathic interstitial pneumonia. The other, you have association with connective tissue diseases and a drug induced, and then you have certain miscellaneous types. So no more queries, so we can sign off for the day. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Thank you, class. You can take down your queries, and we'll address your queries when our lectures restarts, and we can take up your queries face to face in the lecture classes.